Thank the ranking member, and thank the members for your patience. Mr. Stewart, again, thank you for your patience, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Secretary, thanks for being here. I want you to know that representing the other side of the aisle, that many of us have respect, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
And a job you're doing at a very difficult time, honestly, in both domestic and foreign policy. I want to do two housekeeping items if I could. I'm going to try and do it in 30 seconds and get to what I think are important questions. One, my colleague and friend, Mr. Rushenthaler, you and he discussed something very important to him as well as to I and other members of Congress, and that's Mark Fogel, you know, who's being what we think is unlawfully detained or at least wrongfully detained. There's an obvious discrepancy, and I know you've heard this, between his treatment and the treatment of others, say Brittany Griner. And just want you to know that we're going to follow up on that. We won't ask you to comment, but we will follow up on that.
Welcome working with you on that.
Thank you. The second housekeeping item is I agree with the chairman here as well as others as far as oversight of expenditures. Easier to manage oversight of weapons, very, very difficult to do oversight of actual cash payments. I got to tell you, I'm not optimistic that we're going to have a real great outcome on that, just because it's an enormous shift in culture in Ukraine if we do find out there wasn't corruption and waste, because they weren't, the government just isn't and hasn't been manned by much of Mother Teresa's. We know that it's been considered one of the most corrupt governments, you know, in the region and probably the world. We hope that we can provide oversight, and we need to hold them accountable. But again, I wish I could be more optimistic. But that's, again, just a comment, sharing a concern. If I could now to my questions. I want you to know that I've supported Ukraine, and there's a previous question about some people did not want to support them at all. I got to tell you, I don't know anyone who feels that way. But there's a growing number of us who want to continue to support them, but we also want to understand what it is we're trying to achieve there. And I think we have to adjust our goals and our policies as things develop, and probably ask ourselves for the last 20 years, have we learned lessons in Iraq and Afghanistan that we probably should apply here? The president has said we're going to be here as long as it takes, and I've said this before, as long as it takes to do what? And I asked this question of General Milley earlier today, and I want to paraphrase his answer, but you'll recognize it because it's the president's words. Basically, it's this: to ensure that the international rule of law is upheld, that Ukraine continues as a free and sovereign nation, and that its territory is intact. And that's where I want to concentrate. Its territory is intact. Because my great fear is not a recognition that Crimea is different than the eastern Donetsk region. And if our commitment and our agreement with Mr. Zelensky is we will support you for whatever you want to achieve, including the free, you know, and no Russian presence at all in Crimea, then we're asking for a world of hurt. I want to know if you agree with that, briefly if you could, or do you think I'm overreacting? Because I don't know that you could convince me that I wouldn't. I'm dramatically concerned about whether our goals are aligned with Mr. Zelensky's when it comes to Crimea.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. It's an important one, and I'll, just to try to be brief. Look, fundamentally, in the first instance, these have to be Ukrainian decisions about what they want their future to be, and how that lands, and how that lands in terms of the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, the independence of the country, and exactly how that is defined. So, as we're speaking, the Ukrainians are working to take back as much of the territory. Well, now they're defending against a Russian offensive, but they're also looking at continuing to try to take back as much of the territory as they can that was seized by Russia since February of last year. From our perspective, we think that there's a profound principle at stake, which is that we want peace. We want to see this settle, but we think it does need, in our own interest, to be just and durable. And what do I mean by that? Just in that it upholds the basic principles that are in the UN Charter and that have been the basis for peace and security since after 2 world wars. And that is upholding territorial integrity, upholding independence, upholding sovereignty. How exactly that's defined on the ground, we look to the Ukrainians to tell us. And then durable, because what we don't want, for everyone's interest, is to have this settle in a place and in a way that simply invites the Russians to rest, rearm, and then reattack. I think, though, again, to get to your question, I think there's going to be territory in Ukraine that the Ukrainians are determined to fight for on the ground. There may be territory that they decide that they'll have to try to get back in other ways. But we'll look to them to.
And I appreciate that. And once again, you say it's up to Ukraine to make that decision, but it's up to us to decide how far we will go with them down that road as well. And my time is up, so let me just make this comment, if I could, very quickly. And when it comes to burden sharing, and you said it's 32 billion to 22 billion, I wish those numbers were reversed, and I think they should be reversed. This is Europe's backyard. And you're going to have growing demands in Congress, just so you know, so you can share this with our partners, for more of a one-to-one burden sharing than we've seen in the past. And again, if you would convey to our partners that Congress is going to be leaning much more towards that.
And it's very, and it's actually helpful.
Yeah, exactly,
have
for
that-
you to know that
yes.
this can, you can blame us if you want.
That's
We're the bad guys.
That's what I do.
Yeah, thank you.